You ever see one of those science headlines that just makes you scratch your head and go, wait, what? You know the ones. They seem to contradict themselves or, frankly, just don't make any sense. Well, today, we're going to put on our detective hats. We're going to crack the code on these confusing findings. Let's jump right in.
So, let's start with a classic puzzle. Imagine you read this. A new study says coffee is linked to cancer, but only in men, not in women. So what's going on here? Is there something fundamentally different about men's bodies? Or is there maybe a hidden clue we're all missing?
Now, the fancy scientific term for this phenomenon is interaction. All it means is that the effect of something, in our case coffee, is different depending on some other factor, like a person's sex. But as any good detective will tell you, things are rarely that simple. We've got to dig a little deeper.
All right, here's our game plan, our case file, if you will. We'll start with that puzzling headline. Then we're going to investigate our list of suspects. Could it be just random chance? Are there hidden factors at play? What about unequal exposures? If we can roll all of those out, we might just have a real biological clue on our hands. And stick around, because at the end, you're going to get your very own scientific detective kit.
Seriously, these headlines are absolutely everywhere, and they can be so confusing, right? Our mission today is to learn how to read between the lines and figure out what's really going on.
Okay, so we've got this study showing a difference between men and women. The very first question any good scientist or detective should ask is, could this just be a fluke, a total coincidence? And here's why pure chance is such a likely suspect. Think about it. When you take a big group of people and start slicing them into smaller and smaller subgroups, men, women, older men, younger women, you name it, you dramatically increase your odds of finding a weird pattern that's just, random luck.
There's actually a term for this in research. It's called data dredging. It's what happens when a researcher gets a result they don't like, so they just keep slicing and dicing the data until they find something that looks important. It's super tempting for sure, but man, it can lead you way, way off track.
Okay, so let's say we've looked into it and we're pretty sure it's not just random chance. Our investigation is not over, not by a long shot. Now we need to look for hidden clues. And our next two big suspects are confounding and bias. Let's talk about confounding first. A confounder is basically a hidden variable, a third factor that you didn't account for that's messing with your results. It's the classic reason we always hear that correlation doesn't equal causation. So let's get back to our coffee mystery. This table is basically what the researchers found. Look at this. For women, coffee had 0 effect on their cancer risk. An odds ratio of 1.0 means no change. But for men, it looked like it more than doubled their risk, a ratio of 2.2. I mean, that's the kind of thing that makes headlines.
But a good detective always has to ask, what am I not seeing? What else could be going on? And in this case, there's a huge potential clue we haven't even talked about: smoking. It's pretty well known that heavy coffee drinkers are often also smokers. So could that be the real culprit here?
And voila, here's the big reveal. Once the researchers separated the men into smokers and non-smokers, the link between coffee and cancer just, poof, it vanished. The odds ratio went back to 1.0 for everyone. The whole time, smoking was the mastermind behind the scenes. Case closed on that clue.
So confounding is all about a hidden factor. But there's another kind of hidden problem we need to look for, and that's bias. Bias isn't about another variable. It's about a fundamental flaw in how the study itself was designed or carried out that skews the results. Here is a really striking example of bias in action. One study found, incredibly, that Black women appeared to have a lower risk of miscarriage than white women, but that didn't make much sense. So when the researchers dug deeper and compared women with similar education levels, a proxy for access to healthcare, that difference completely disappeared. The problem was a bias in data collection. Miscarriages were being systematically underreported in less educated Black women. The racial difference wasn't real, it was a ghost in the data.
Okay, detective, we are making progress. We've crossed 3 big suspects off our list: chance, confounding, and bias. But there's one more imposter we need to check for before we can say we have a real biological effect. And this one, it's all about the dose.
Here are a couple of perfect examples. In a study on asthma in New Orleans, they found that soy dust seemed much more dangerous on days with low wind. Why? Because with less wind, people were breathing in a much higher concentration of it, a bigger dose. Same thing with smoking and lung disease. For many years, it looked more dangerous for men, but a big part of that was simply because, historically, men just smoked way more heavily than women did. In both cases, the dose made all the difference.
So, we've done the hard work. We've questioned all the usual suspects: chance, confounding, bias, dose. We've ruled them out. Now we're ready for the big reveal. Now we get to see if we've actually found a genuine, real-deal biological clue.
And this is really what it's all about. This is that incredible aha moment when you realize, wow, these two groups are actually biologically reacting differently to the same thing. The reason isn't a mistake in the data, it's written in their DNA.
And I have the absolute best example for you. It's about dogs and secondhand smoke. Get this. Scientists found that in long-nosed dogs, think greyhounds or collies, passive smoking is linked to nose cancer. But in short-nosed dogs, like pugs and bulldogs, it's linked to lung cancer. The theory is that the long snout acts like a filter, catching the carcinogens before they reach the lungs, while the short snout lets everything go straight in. Now that is a real biological interaction.
What a journey, huh? We've gone from a confusing headline about coffee all the way to a pug's lungs. So now it's time to take everything we've learned, put all the clues together, and build your very own scientific detective kit.
Here it is, your 5-step checklist for decoding any confusing health headline you come across. The next time you see a study claiming something affects one group but not another, just run down this list. Is it just chance? Is there a hidden factor, a confounder? Is the study itself flawed with some kind of bias? Are the doses actually the same for everyone? And then, and only then, do you ask, is there a real, plausible biological reason for this difference?
This is your secret weapon. This is how you cut through all the hype and get to what's really going on. Because thinking like a scientist isn't just for scientists. It's for anyone who wants to understand the world just a little bit better. So tell me, the next time you see one of those confusing headlines, what's the first question you're going to ask?